Some people might not want to hear this, but Trump is doomed to fail in his efforts to resolve Ukraine crisis. As we all know, Trump has presented himself as the peacemaker-in-chief who can end the war in Ukraine. After meeting Putin in Alaska, he declared that peace was on the horizon and even suggested a meeting between Zelensky and Putin was underway. Unfortunately, recent reports suggest Trump's efforts are faltering and peace might be further than anyone imagined. In fact, we can confidently say that Trump may not succeed at all. Here are 3 reasons why he will fail. Russian immovable demands. Since June 2024, Russia has made demands that no serious mediator, let alone a U.S. president, should ignore or downplay. Particularly, Russia insists that Ukraine must recognize Donbass, Lugansk, Kherson, and Zaporozhye as Russian territory. These regions voted in September 2022 to join Russia, a vote that Zelensky and his Western supporters refuse to recognize. Putin has also been adamant that Ukraine must withdraw its forces from the parts it already controls in the 4 regions. Obviously, these are not starting points for negotiation. They are ultimatums. Trump cannot force Putin to abandon the demands since the Russians believe they have the upper hand on the battlefield. This purported advantage makes it unlikely for them to offer any meaningful concessions on the issue. Aside from territorial demands, Moscow is calling for Ukraine to be demilitarized and to stop what it claims is the persecution of Russian speakers. Russia wants to ensure post-war Ukraine does not pose a security threat or undermine the freedom of Russian speakers. It is very hard to see how Trump can satisfy this demand without leaving Ukraine vulnerable to future attacks. In this sense, Trump can't meet Russian demands, meaning he won't succeed in his peace efforts. Ukraine's refusal to make concessions. Why won't Ukraine back down? Why does it continue to refuse territorial concessions and demilitarization, even after Trump and other leaders urge it to do so? Let's break it down. For one, Ukraine sees these demands as an attack on its sovereignty, plain and simple. Giving up territory, like Crimea, Kherson, Zaporozhye, or Donbass, would mean losing more than 1/5 of the country, and likely setting a dangerous precedent for future attacks. To add salt to the wound, accepting territorial losses would ignore the sacrifices made by Ukrainians during the war and undermine the national identity of Ukraine. These hardened convictions complicates Trump's quest to strike a deal between the 2 fighting countries. On the issue of demilitarization, Ukraine sees a strong military as essential to its future security and independence. Without a military, it would not be able to defend its territory if Russia decides to attack again. That is why the issue of security guarantees has become important. Unfortunately, Russia has insisted that Ukraine must only have a small army after the war. Reconciling these opposite positions is a difficult task, even for a person who considers himself a peacemaker like Trump. Unless both sides make significant concessions, the president won't be able to arrive at a deal that satisfies both sides. European demands. Besides having to contend with the Ukrainians and Russians, Trump also has to deal with European leaders who insist they must be part of the negotiations. Their inclusion and demands make the already complex negotiations even more complicated. Furthermore, the Europeans are making the same demands Ukraine is championing. They reject Ukraine's demilitarization and are uncomfortable with the prospect of Russia annexing the territories of the 4 regions. As expected, the rigid positions held by Europeans have slowed Trump's peace efforts. After the Alaska meeting, he probably thought the process would move quickly, but this has not occurred. On the contrary, Europeans appear determined to make sure Zelensky does not make any concessions to Trump and Putin, which is the reason why they accompanied him to Washington. Moreover, you could argue that leaders in Europe do not want the war to end after investing so much in the conflict, emotionally and financially. In fact, some officials around Trump have accused Europe of not being interested in resolving the war. If true, this is yet another reason why Trump will not be able to end the Ukraine-Russia war. So, what do you think Trump should do? Let me know in the comment section. And please remember to smash the subscribe and the like buttons.